The Toronto Blue Jays are calling up Spencer Horwitz and Chad Green ahead of the roster expansions, and it's going to provide some much needed relief to this Blue Jays lineup and to this Blue Jays pitching staff. They got a lot of injuries, they got a lot of guys underperforming, and it's going to be a big help to this team as they are in the stretch run of the season. And we also got some Brandon Belt news, and look away if you're a big fan of his because he's contemplating retirement at the end of the season. So we'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse, and got a couple of roster moves to announce to you guys today. And the Blue Jays are getting ready for a weekend series against the Colorado Rockies coming up here. And then they got the Oakland Athletics after that. So to say I would be disappointed with anything less than 5 wins in these 6 games would be an understatement. But the Blue Jays know what's in front of them. They know that they got to take care of business here. And hopefully these moves could go ahead and help them with that, Nick.
Yeah, some crazy, moves going down. Obviously, rosters expanded today. Before we get into that, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and your support's been great. And let's get right into the first topic, which is the Blue Jays making moves. And as of the time of recording, this is August 31st, so the official moves haven't went down, but Ben Nicholson-Smith did tweet out that they are going to be happening, and it all kind of started about an hour ago with Keegan Matheson noting that with the rosters expanding tomorrow, tonight's AAA Buffalo game, including a Relvis Addison and not Spencer Horwitz. And then ultimately, Ben Nicholson-Smith came out and tweeted out, when rosters expand tomorrow, which is today as the time of watching, Chad Green will take the pitching spot on the Blue Jays roster, source said. So the Jays call-ups will be Spencer Horwitz and Chad Green. And Peter, this was pretty, expected, I guess, especially for Chad Green. We didn't know if he'd go with Spencer Horwitz. They had a couple options. I guess a Relvis was on. We discussed that earlier throughout the year, but they ultimately went with probably the safest bet between all of them and Spencer Horwitz and, of course, Chad Green. And now the question remains is who they're going to send, down an option. And, we don't know as of right now. You can let us know if it gets updated later on in the day today. But, Peter, what are your thoughts on these two moves?
Yeah, well, we don't know the severity of Brandon Belt's injury. I mean, he's been out for the past couple of games, so you would think that Spencer Horwitz would come in and slide into that Brandon Belt role, play a little bit of first base, DH against right-handed pitching, and that's what you would expect of him. I don't know how much he'll play once Brandon Belt is cleared and ready to go, but he is someone that's very advanced as a prospect. He kind of is what he is. He's a bit of a finished product, and he's going to get on base. He's not going to hit for much power, but he's going to provide some much needed relief to this Blue Jay lineup. And Chad Green, I know that there might be some confusion on whether or not he's going to be eligible for the playoff roster because he is getting added for tomorrow,
He is.
but he has already spent 60 days on the injured list, so that clears all the confusion. You can either be called up before that, be added to the 40-man roster, or have spent your amount of allocated days on the injured list, and Chad Green has done that. So that puts to bed any of the concerns that he'll be eligible for the playoff roster. So hopefully he can perform well down the stretch and be a valuable contributor, because we know Eric Swanson is out. Tim Meza, not necessarily going to be an eighth inning guy for this team. And they need someone. They need another high leverage arm. And Chad Green has pitched really well in his AAA Buffalo appearances. So it's nice to see him come back. He's a veteran guy. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see what these guys are going to do going forward. There's about 28, 29 games left in the season here. And I figure that they're going to play quite a bit down the stretch.
Yeah, it's there, it's the time to win, especially against these teams that we have a very, very easy schedule for the next 12 games. And if we can, let the AL West teams beat up on each other, we definitely have a chance for the playoffs. And speaking on, again, who we think could get, sent down, this is an interesting point here. They said, wouldn't it be wild if Espinal gets DFA'd and that turns into 2 position players from AAA joining the Jays tomorrow? Interesting thought. Nothing seems to be brewing on that front. And that's not going to happen. But my question to you, Peter, is who do you think is going to be sent down or DFA'd or whatever it is to make room for the guys that are getting called up? Do you think it's an Espinal? Do you think it's someone else? Obviously, we'll know later on today, but as of now, we don't. Is there anyone you want to see sent down, or do you think that I don't know, anyone?
Well, they don't need to send anyone down right now because you're allowed to call these 2 players up. The rosters go from 26 to 28, so you're allowed those extra 2 players. But when Bo is ready to come back, when
And that's
Matt
the thing.
Chapman is ready to come back, Mason McCoy figures to get DFA'd or sent down. I don't know if he has options. Don't know how that works over there. But you could think of a possible scenario in which Espinal does get DFA'd, but they would have done it
And that's yeah.
up until this point, so you figure that it would have been done by now if they were even thinking of doing that. He's been playing well as of late. I still don't think he's a long-term fit for this team, but it would have happened by now. So I don't think we could really contemplate that. I mean, I'd be open to it. I'd be open to having Addison Barger come up, or Relvis Martinez. It would be easy. They're on the 40-man roster, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, again, like you said, you don't have to make a move because obviously the rosters expand, but eventually someone on this team is going to have to get sent down when, Chapman and Bo come up. And it figures to be Mason McCoy, but figured I'd bring it up because, Santiago Espinal, there's a lot of, stuff going on about him. He's had a very disappointing season. And, you know, realistically, the guys in the minor leagues, there are a couple of guys that, we would think could perform better than Espinal has performed down the season, but ultimately, they're going to probably stick with him. They would have, maybe traded him at the deadline or, sent DFA'd him by now rather than anywhere else. But any final thoughts on this topic before we move on to a bit of a sad one?
Yeah, well, so we touched on the two guys that are going to be coming back, and we only mentioned one name, Mason McCoy, that's going to be going down or getting DFA'd. Who's going to be the other guy? Is it going to be Horwitz getting optioned back down, which is probably the most likely scenario? But if he performs well and if he is a valuable contributor in these next couple of games before Brandon Belt is back, then yes, it's a real possibility that Espinal is the guy that goes down to make room for Chapman and Bichette.
Yeah, and that's why I asked, and I'm wondering what you guys think in the comment section. So let us know there as we transition into a bit of a more sad topic. Brandon Bell potentially retiring, and I just saw this just then, and he was on a podcast. And Peter, I know you probably didn't see it. It was kind of something that flew under the radar up until a little bit ago. Here it is. So another interesting nugget. Blue Jays Brandon Belt went in the Foul Territory podcast and said that he's considering retiring after the current season. Says it might turn interested teams off, but he's getting up there in age and has a growing desire to spend more time with his family. Shout out to Antoine DeBell for pointing this out. Now, Peter, this is kind of came out of nowhere, and this is a pretty big deal for the Blue Jays if they planned on bringing him back beforehand. I would have been open to bringing Brandon Belt back. He's very, 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 very productive this year. He's probably been our best hitter aside from Bo Bichette. Though he is getting up in age, he has I guess a family and stuff, which is more important than baseball in the grand scheme of things. What are your thoughts on this news that I didn't think we'd be talking about while this playoff race is underway here?
Yeah, it's sad to see, definitely. And if you were to tell me this in April, I'd say good riddance. Go ahead, go ahead and retire. But it's not the case right now. He's been the number 3 hitter for this Blue Jay team. He's been so productive, like you said, and probably has been the second best hitter. And maybe apart from one hot stretch of Bo Bichette, he probably has been the best hitter on this team. And he draws a lot of walks. He's got some pretty good power in that number 3 spot. I don't know if the Jays would have brought him back though, because Horwitz is on this roster and he is someone that could fill that role pretty nicely. Very similar player profile to Brandon Belt. So I don't know if they would have been open to bringing him back. Maybe he signs a 1-day contract with the Giants and retires with them. That would probably be fitting for an end to his career. But yeah, I mean, he's had a good season. He's been very productive, been a great leader on this team, and if he is going to call it quits at the end of the year, go ahead and play your butt off for the last 28 games and bring home a World Series championship to the Blue Jays.
He's been up there with Bo Bichette. I'd still probably give Bo Bichette the edge on being the better hitter, but the fact that's even a conversation this year shows how good of a deal that was for the Blue Jays. And like you said, Horwitz is probably the guy that takes his place. They're very, very similar. Obviously, Belt has a bit more power. Horwitz has excellent discipline, but maybe it's all kind of working out in this one video that we talked about Horwitz and potentially, him replacing Brandon Belt when he retires. But that'll wrap up the video, Peter. Very important stretch of games coming up, and they need to take care of business against these teams, because if they don't, then our chances of making the playoffs are, quite slim. We're 2.5 games back now. Yesterday, the Mets did us a big favor in beating the Rangers. So we have a series against them in September. We keep talking about the series. It will by far be the biggest series the Blue Jays play all year. And any quick thoughts on that before we wrap up the video?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing is to keep yourself in it until that 4-game series. And you got to go ahead and take care of business. It'll probably be the most important series of the year for the Blue Jays, but it might not be that important if you can't take care of business against these terrible teams that you're up against coming up next. So you got the Rockies, you got the A's. Then you got another team that's below
Royals,
500
I believe.
before you, yeah, but the Royals, exactly, before you embark on that stretch run against divisional opponents and the Texas Rangers. So go ahead, take care of business, and don't leave it up to chance.
And don't underestimate those teams because you need to basically go 9-1 in the next 10 games. But that'll wrap up the video. Thank you guys for watching. See you tomorrow.